Over a course of 10 or 15 years, there was 128 different religions started in this 5-county area. It was called the Burned Over District because there was a new religion burning through it every few weeks or months. Mormons, Joseph Smith started in that burned over district, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. The roots of all three of those religions are in that, the burned over district.
My Muslim brothers and sisters, did you know that when people leave Scientology, a lot of times it takes them a while to recover? They're frequently disconnected from their friends and family against their will, and they're told that they're weak and rebellious, or that they were just offended, or that they weren't doing Scientology right. And in order to get permission to leave Scientology, they have to come back and do an exit interview with Scientology, because the Scientologists believe that they just need more and better Scientology. So hopefully all Muslims are in favor of recovering from Scientology.org. It's not an anti-Scientology organization, but it's a place outside of Scientology where ex-Scientologists can reevaluate their experience and beliefs with some objectivity. Now I'd like to talk to my Mormon brothers and sisters because there are ex-Muslims who frequently take a long time to recover when they leave. Even though Islam, like Scientology, denies forcibly disconnecting people from their friends and family, a lot of times that's their experience. They're almost always told that the reason that they're leaving is because they were weak, or because they're rebellious, or because they just got offended at a person inside of Islam. And they're told that the answer is more and better, the right Islam. So hopefully all Mormons are in favor of recovering from Islam.org, which is not an anti-Islam organization. It's just a place outside of Islam where ex-Muslims can reevaluate their experience and beliefs with some objectivity. Now, my Christian brothers and sisters, did you know that when Mormons leave, they're frequently told that the only reason that they're leaving is because they're weak and they're rebellious, or that they just got offended at someone in the church, and that the answer is they need to do Mormonism more and better, the right way. So hopefully all Christians, all real Christians, would be in favor of recovering from Mormonism.org, which is not against Mormonism. It's just a place outside of Mormonism where ex-Mormons can reevaluate their beliefs and their experience with some objectivity. Now, of course, those organizations aren't real, but recovering from religion.org is a real organization, and it seems like Christians should be in favor of it because there are people leaving religions. Yes, even some leaving Christianity, not your church. Your church is a great one, but the other ones who would need a place outside of Christianity or Islam or Scientology or Mormonism, just a place where they can objectively reevaluate their experience and their beliefs. And I know all Mormons are like, well, yeah, but they could do that inside of the Mormon church. And all the Muslims are like, well, they could do that inside of Islam. And all the Scientologists are like, well, that's what Scientology is here for, is to fix that problem. And it seems like all Christians are like, well, yeah, if you need to recover from the church, where you should go is the church. Hopefully you can see why, even if you don't agree with why, that's a little bit ridiculous. But we have the truth, is what all the groups say. No, but ours really is the truth, is what all the groups say. If you are in one of those groups, I've got great respect for you listening to today's episode with Dr. Darrel Ray. He's a psychologist and an author and the founder of the Secular Therapy Project, and yes, recoveringfromreligion.org, where they're not trying to talk anybody into or out of anything. It's just a safe place for people to be really internally honest and examine their beliefs without the pressure or judgment for wherever they land. In other words, they're doing what the church should be doing. Maybe your church is already doing that, so you would be a supporter of Dr. Darrel Ray. So what is it in particular about religion that you've seen that people need to recover from?
Well, generally speaking, we've had many people come to us over the years saying, I left religion and I feel like I've been born again. And when they use that term, they don't mean it in the way the Christians mean it. They're born again in a bad way, in the sense that I don't even know how to do my own checkbook, or I don't know how to drive a car, or I don't know how to, manage my family without Jesus involved all the time. So people realize that religion really restricted their skill development as an adult. And here they are, 40 years old, and asking a question that most 10 or 12-year-olds may be able to answer, like, is evolution true or not? Is the earth flat or not? There's really base, I'm exaggerating obviously a little bit, but
not entirely.
but I've had every one of those. Yes, every one of them. And so people are leaving religion without the skills to be an adult in the modern world. And they start making all sorts of mistakes. For instance, many people lose their relationships, lose their marriages, and they've never had to date. They just married the person who sat next to them in Sunday school when they were 19 years old. Well, how do you act like an adult in the dating world now? That's a difficult question to answer for a 35 or 40-year-old. And so we just see all these skill deficiencies in people, and they call us at Recovery from Religion. They call us and they chat with us and they tell us their problems, and so many of the problems are directly related to the deficiency in their in development. I mean, literally developmental deficiencies, that people experience because they didn't go through the proper developmental stages. For example, sexuality. How many people have we had come to us and say, I've known I was gay until since I was 12 years old, but I ended up getting married and having kids, and then at 35 I decided I'm going to live my own authentic life and come out as gay. And they missed a whole developmental phase of how do you develop as a mature gay person in this society. And so sometimes their behavior is inappropriate. Sometimes it's just self-destructive, like getting into alcohol or drugs. So I can go on and on and on, but those are examples of why people need to recover. They need to learn the skills they lost or skipped over or didn't have the opportunity to learn when they were 14, 18, 21 years of age. And that's not our main focus, but that seems to be what's going on. I don't know about you, Jamin, but you and I talked a little bit before we started the podcast. You probably had some things to learn when you finally left religion because you were in a cult or a near cult. I'm not going to call it a cult unless you want it to be.
It's almost a cult, yeah.
So many cults restrict you around identity and sexuality, and they prevent you from, for example, you've got to give Mormons, you got to give 10% before taxes. Okay. When you get out of the church, what do you do with that money? What are you going to do?
Right.
You and I laugh, but it's really a question they got to ask themselves. I'm not giving it to the church. What do I do with that money? Do I buy more alcohol? Do I start drinking coffee? Do I give it to a local charity? How do I know which charities to give it to? Because I don't want to give it to a Mormon charity or a Christian charity, those kinds of things. Anyway, that's a long answer to your very short question.
Well, I mean, I think it's appropriate too, because I think a lot of times when you leave, like you're saying, a lot of things fall apart emotionally, mentally, just phenomenologically. Like you're talking about relationships falling apart, like your finances, like you don't know what to do there. Like, and then the things that go wrong, it feels like commonly there's this question, and not even a question, an accusation that you're sure is true, that this is punishment from God. And all of your former community says, well, of course your marriage fell apart because you turned away from God. And if you turn back to God, things are going to go well again. Like there's this huge draw to go back to what might have been your abusers.
Right.
And so like then trying to hold that together without that community of support, it feels like that's massive.
Well, that kind of hits on a territory that I think that I also like to explore, and that is attachment theory related to religious recovery, because you're raised, our brains are really designed to attach. And in fact, attachment is really important to humans because we're such a damn social species, and we find great benefit in having the protection of a community around us, any community almost. History shows us some pretty nasty communities still give people the benefits of that protection. So you leave a church, but your brain is still attached. And your brain still wants that protection, that perceived protection. It may have been horrible. It may have been very destructive to you, but it still feels more comfortable. So people complain a lot when they come to recover from religion that I have this need. I really feel like I need to go back to church. And yet I know if I do, it would be horrible for me, just like it was before. What's causing that? Well, it's our natural attachments. And so to detach feels scary. It's like jumping off a cliff with a parachute. Are we sure the parachute's going to open? I've never done this before. Well, that's where people are when they leave religion. They've never done it before, and they're not sure they have the skills, and they're not sure they can find the community, which is one of the big things we help people find at Recover from Religion. We help them find new communities to reattach to, because the brain's going to attach somewhere. That's just the way we're built. And if we can help you find a secular group in your community, or a UU church, or a Quaker church, we don't care. We'll help you get back in church if that's what you want. But we're going to help you try to do it in more mentally healthy way. And many people come to us and they need mental health support, and they can't find a therapist to support that. So that's why I started the Secular Therapy Project way back in 2012 to help people find therapists that will support them in their transition and not tell them, we've had therapists. We know of many therapists who tell people, well, do you think your depression is because you left the church? Well, hell yes, it's because I left the church, because I lost my community. I got divorced. I lost access to my kids in some ways. I no longer have a value system that there's lots of things that happen when you leave church. And so people do go through depression. They do go mental health crises. And we're here to try and smooth that out. It like you said, you didn't want to spend the rest of your life being angry. What you and I were talking about earlier. Well, these people don't want to spend the rest of their life being angry either, but nobody's there to help them. And we're the safety net where you can fall into the Recover from Religion community, and we will help you find the way you want to go. We're not here to convert you or deconvert you. We're not here to tell you how to live your life. We're here to just hold you while you find out yourself.
Among therapists, is a higher percentage of therapists Christian or religious than?
Unfortunately, I mean, big time. It's horrible that if you if you look at the Christian colleges about 20 years ago decided, oh, we can get into family therapy and we can really get Jesus there, or tell people how to get Jesus there. So you've got entire universities like Pat Robertson's Regents University giving people PhDs in family psychology or family systems, or in PhDs in psychology. And in order to get a PhD from Pat Robertson's Regents University, you have to spend a year learning about Pat Robertson's theology that Jesus sends hurricanes to Orlando because of the gays. That's crazy. And yet those people are graduating and they're getting licensed in the respective states, and they've got what appears to be a legitimate PhD. It's horrible. And so many therapists hide their religious affiliations, and yet those religious affiliations influence their decision-making and how they go about doing therapy. So for that reason, therapists who are in our system, our secular therapy system, we guarantee they are not religious. They have to prove to us they're not religious before we can let them in. And they have to prove to us they use evidence-based methodologies rather than woo-woo bullshit or Christian bullshit. I mean, crystals and woo-woo stuff are just as bad as Christian bullshit. I mean, you go to San Francisco, you get a lot of woo-woo. But you go to Alabama, you're going to get a lot of Christian. And they're everywhere. And the layperson doesn't know how to parse these out. You can't go on a website and tell if a psychologist or a social worker is going to let their religion into their practice. You just can't. And you may scratch down, you may go to a therapist for 3 or 4 sessions, and then the 4th session they said, do you think you should pray more about this? And you've just spent 3 or 4 weeks dealing with this other and all of a sudden you get triggered by the very thing you're there to get over. And there's a lot of Christian therapists who deny. They say, my religion doesn't traumatize people. That's all the other religions.
Right. Of course, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we try to get around all that stuff.
I mean, it's just an anecdote, but so my own experience was, by the first therapist I went to, I was 39 years old. I had just left this cult and had all kinds of trauma resulting from that I didn't see as related to my spirituality. I went to this therapist that was supposedly like he was an expert in recovering from cults, which is why I went to him. I didn't want like a Christian guy. I just wanted like someone who's had experience with this. Like you're saying, I spent 3 sessions just pouring out my crazy, insane story, and then he had me buy 3 Philip Yancey books.
No! Oh!
Like, holy crap! Can I get my money back? Like, that was his solution. It was like it was the same thing. Just like, well, yeah. I mean, other cults are bad, but like this is the right thing. And it was
my cult doesn't do as bad as the other cults do.
Right. Yep. And that was like my introduction to therapy. And fortunately, I had a lot of people who were like, you know what, maybe try one more before you give up on therapy entirely. But that would have been the end of my mental health journey.
You know what's happened to Philip Yancey?
Yeah. It was when I saw that in the news, I was like, alrighty. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that his books are wrong, but also like it, just because he was a Christian doesn't mean they were right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you are the perfect example of why recovering from religion exists and why the Secular Therapy Project exists. Because so many people actually receive triggering and abusive treatment. I mean, it's abusive to try and use the thing that abused you to heal you. And so there, if you look carefully, you'll find the amount of, quote, Christian counselors has just exploded. And so many universities, legitimate universities that are like Baylor or Brigham Young University. When you go to Brigham Young University, I don't know if you know this, but you sign a document that says, "I will not master." Yeah, you're a 20-year-old going into school there, a 22 going to graduate school to get a master's or a PhD, and you're going to sign it, and you're going to be a psychologist, right? Yeah, right. And so when those people graduate, what's in their head? What did they learn there? It was probably very sex negative ideas.
Well, let me ask this, because it's come up a couple times, and a couple times in my mentors' journeys as well. You've mentioned Quakers a couple times. I know you spent some time identifying as a Quaker or living as a Quaker.
I consider myself a Quaker atheist.
Okay, all right. So maybe you can tell me more about that. Like how does Quaker, how is that similar and different from other religious groups?
Quakers are remarkably different than many religious groups, and the roots of their George Fox started in about 1648, quite a while back, of course, as a reaction to all the crap that was going on in England with respect to the English Civil War. Catholics were killing Protestants, Protestants were killing Catholics. It was an extension of the 30 Years' War in Europe, where the same thing had gone on for 30 years, obviously. So what George Fox did was say, look, let's let the individual find their own way. And he was spiritual. He did believe in God, that sort of stuff. And of course, in 1648, everybody did. Darwin hadn't come along yet. Bertrand Russell hadn't written any books yet, so it developed as an organization that put humans first, humanity first, care and compassion for humans first. That's why from the very beginning, the Quakers were very interested in mental health, and they did a lot to reform the mental health system for what it was in England. They were also very interested in prison and prison reform, and in fact, the notion of a reformatory or the kind of prison that we think of today is a direct result of the Quakers' ideas about how you should reform people who violated social laws. Well, and I'm not saying everything Quakers did was right, but if you think about it, in Newcastle, it was Newcastle prison, I believe it was. They just threw men, women, and children all in the same room and left them there for years. And that was what they did. For a prostitute would be thrown in prison with all sorts of other criminals in one just gigantic room. There was no rehabilitation. So the brilliant idea of the Quakers, especially in Pennsylvania, when they came over, was to to give every human their own cell. So they literally built prisons with individual cells. And then everybody got a Bible, and your job was to sit in the cell and study your Bible until you got reformed. Now, I'm not saying that was the best approach, but it was better than what they were doing before. And ever since then, the Quakers have, of course, they've long since passed that. Quakers have been very interested in mental health and very interested in prison reform, and also anti-war. Quakers are pacifists by and large. It's not a requirement. General Greene of the Revolutionary War was a Quaker, but he was certainly not a pacifist. He helped win the American Revolution War. So I use the term we because I've been associated with the Quakers basically since I was a child. My uncle was a Quaker, and my grandfather was a Quaker. And then as I got into college, I went to Friends University, which was a Quaker college. And I learned about George Fox. I read his biography and learned his approach to life. And it's a very humanistic approach. Humanistic before the word humanistic had been invented. And if you look at the way the Quakers function today, they are very humanistic. And you can be an atheist and a Quaker. It doesn't matter. As long as you put humanity first, you'd probably make a good Quaker. I don't know. Is that answering your question?
Yeah,
about the Quakers?
I think so. So they would claim you just as much as you claim them.
Probably. Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, they definitely would. If you want to know more about it, there's a great book by D. Alton Truebud called "The People Called Quakers," and it's a history of the whole Quaker movement, especially focused on its development in the United States. Now, I will say this: Eastern Quakers, like Philadelphia Quakers, come very close to the original Quaker model, I guess you could say. Quakers on the West Coast look more like Baptists, so you got to be a little careful about them. Richard Nixon was a fucking Quaker, that's all. I don't think we claim him, but he was born and raised in the Quaker Church. The problem was that as the Quaker movement moved west, and I actually talk about this kind of stuff in my book, The God Virus, because religions change and evolve just like organisms do. And the Quaker movement changed and evolved as it moved across the United States. The Quaker Church in my hometown of Wichita, Kansas, is kind of like a halfway Quaker, halfway between the Philadelphia Quaker and the San Diego Quakers, if you could look at it that way. And they've lost some of the value of that humanistic focus that was the beginnings of the Quaker movement.
Well, I find it interesting that like a lot of people who have helped me recover from my own religious past have, like, the word Quaker keeps coming up, which I wouldn't have expected as an evangelical. I just knew them as another religion that wasn't right like ours was. So that's interesting.
The interesting thing about the Quaker tradition was it's very contemplative, and almost like in a Buddhist way. When you go to a Quaker meeting, if it's a Philadelphia Quaker, if it's an English Quaker, East Coast, you will walk into the meeting room, and they call it a meeting house. They do not call it a church. That's intentional. It's a meeting house. You go in the meeting house and you sit down, and it's an hour of silence. You do not talk. And that's hard for people to get their head around. Okay, you got to shut your mouth and listen. Now, the theory of the early Quakers was being quiet and settling down allows the Spirit of God to talk to you, so you can listen, you can hear, and as a result of that, you get inspired, and that's where the word Quaker comes from, because people apparently quaked like nervous when the Spirit came into them. Well, now we know that's just a psychological phenomenon. There's no spirit coming into you. But just shutting your brain, shutting your mouth, opening your ears, because during that meeting, you might have one or two people, and maybe nobody, might have one or two people stand up and say, I had an insight this week, and they'll stand up and talk for 3 to 5 minutes. They don't talk for long, and they'll reveal their insight, and then they'll sit back down, and you'll be quiet again. It's like one of the most unique ways of being in a social group I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate. I think silence is a very wonderful thing to learn how to be silent. And Quakers are damn good at being silent. And a lot of Quakers, I see a picture behind you, and I'm not sure what that picture is, but if you were marching, I marched in civil rights. I was born in 1950. I marched in the late 60s, early 70s in civil rights stuff. And Quakers were always, always in those marches. You could almost not find a civil rights march that didn't have Quakers involved. They're really involved in civil rights and have been for years. Centuries, not years, centuries.
That's
They're
neat.
right on the cutting edge of abolition against slavery, right from the very beginning. In the 1780s, the Quakers were preaching against slavery in Carolinas, of all places.
Does that mean that they're at the forefront of sexual equality stuff too?
Oh, yeah.
Or?
Well, the second George Fox started the Quaker movement, and within a few weeks after starting it, Margaret Fry came along and she was married. She was married to Dr. Fry. It wasn't a relationship between, but she helped found Quakerism. So you got a man and a woman right off the bat. And yes, if you went to any Quaker meeting, by the way, they don't have a leader. They don't have a preacher. The East Coast ones don't. The West Coast ones have succumbed to the Baptist approach, but they don't have a. And so you might have a convener, and the convener could be female, and it could be female in 1670 or in 1820, and the same. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing now. There has never been a preference, a gender preference in Quakerism, and that started from the minute the Quaker movement started, which is quite revolutionary if you think about it. In 1648.
Well, I think in America, wasn't it like 1970s before women could get a credit card without their husband's
1970. I was married in 1970, and my wife could not get a credit card. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
By 1972, women could get credit cards, but it was just crazy. Yeah, you can't believe it was like that back then, but it was.
Okay, well, maybe we could transition. I'm terribly curious if there is a possibility for modern day Christianity American Christianity, because that's where I live, to evolve to the point that it does more good than harm.
If you look at the history of religions in general, they all change and evolve. And religion is always behind the curve of the culture. Religion's always playing catch up, if you will. So when the culture changes, only the religions that adjust are going to survive. And I'll give you an excellent example. In the 1820s and 1830s, there was this crazy place in upstate New York with about 5 counties that just seemed to birth new religions every week or two. Over a course of 10 or 15 years, there was 128 different religions started in this 5-county area. In fact, if you look at Google it, and you'll the burned over district. It was called the burned over district because there was a new religion burning through it every few weeks or months. Out of those 128, only the most successful are going to survive. Can you guess who those are? Those successful ones?
They'd be the ones we have today, I would assume.
Mormons.
Okay.
Mormons. Joseph Smith started in that burned over district time. The Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. The roots of all 3 of those religions are in that. Now, all the other religions died out. Just like a bacteria, just like a species in a forest. The ones that can adapt to the current environment are the ones that are going to survive. So that's why I look at religion as almost like a biological entity that it's like rabies needs my body to survive, and rabies has to get in my brain in order to control me and then make me do the things that will propagate the rabies to other creatures, other organisms. Religion is exactly the same way. Religion has to get into your brain, and then it has to change your behavior in such a way that you do what it needs you to do to get to the next brain. Because religions survive in brains, just like the COVID virus survives in your respiratory system. Almost every disease has got a sweet spot in your body that it wants to inhabit. But the other thing is it has to control you. I'm curious, Jamin, have you ever been controlled by a virus or a bacteria?
So I assume that I am right now. I mean, I'm more them than I am me, whatever me is. So
Yeah.
yes, I assume the answer has to be yes.
You're absolutely right. We're only learning this really in recent years, but even more so, if you have a cold and you sneeze, you're sneezing because the bacteria is causing that sneeze. It has taken over your neurological system, or at least one function of it, to make you sneeze so that in this case, probably the virus, gets from your respiratory system to my respiratory system. So when the Jehovah's Witnesses come to your front door and they knock on your door, they're sneezing on you. They're trying to give you their God virus, as are the Mormons when they knock on your door, or the Baptists when they give you a pamphlet, a chick pamphlet or something like that. So it moves like it moves and changes and evolves in response to the culture. So what we're seeing right now, and I've been predicting this literally for decades, that Christianity will change. It has to change. So you're seeing it. Uh, for example, if you went to a Catholic church in 1920, all the women would have hats on. Every one of them would have a hat on. And if they didn't, they would be kicked out. The priest would personally kick them out. Go to a Catholic church now. No woman has a hat on. That's the religion is evolving. The Catholic Church has been absolutely against birth control. Where's the lowest birth rate in the world? It's in Italy. How is that possible? If all these Catholics in Italy are following what the Pope tells them to do, how are they not having tens of? They were having 20 children or 10 children, 100 years ago, and the church isn't doing anything about it. It can't. A church is against abortion, for example, and it's trying to force us back into that regime, both the Protestants and the Catholics, back into a regime where women don't have control over their own bodies. But it's just not working. I don't care how many preachers preach against it. The women he's talking to, they're out there in that audience as he's talking to them. That's almost always a male, of course. A vast number of them, probably 30 to 40% of them, have had abortions, and they will condemn anybody else who had an abortion. But even though they themselves had abortions, the highest abortion rate is among evangelical Christians. Go figure.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is that the religion will evolve or it will die. And so you look at Ireland, for example, probably the most Catholic and most religious place on the planet 100 years ago. And today it's almost as secular as Norway. The Catholic Church has died. And I was just in Ireland. I went on a speaking tour in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and England, and Scotland. I did 8 talks in 17 days back in October, and I was just blown away by the lack of Catholic. The Catholics are just gone. I mean, yeah, there's still churches, obviously, and there's still some priests. But I was there in 2012, the first time I went to Ireland, and the problem was 50 years before that, there were 3 or 4 Catholic priests for every 2 parishes. So they had a priest and a backup.
Yeah, right.
Today, there is 1 priest for every 3 or 4 parishes.
Yep.
Oh, and they're importing them from Nigeria. They can't get enough people in Ireland to be priests. They have to import them from other countries. So the Catholic Church failed to adjust, to adapt, and they're dying. So what's happening in Ireland right now, and it's happening in England, I'm just going to tell you, when we were there, they had a gigantic March for Jesus in Dublin. And it was the American evangelical Christians, money coming into Dublin, Ireland, and sponsoring this big evangelical march in Dublin. Just 2 weeks before I was in London, I went from there to London later, they had another of those giant marches with 10,000 people showing up at Parliament, trying to get Parliament to ban abortion in the United Kingdom. So if what we know about viruses, for example, the smallpox virus, it spreads from very, very effectively from person to person. But what um, Edwards Jennings, the famous scientist, discovered was that cowpox prevents smallpox. So if you inoculate somebody with cowpox, they're likely not to get smallpox. So you've used one vaccine to inoculate another, and it's a beautiful way to increase physical health, of course. Or religions do the same thing. When you get a lesson in how bad Catholics are at being Christians, and we're the better Christians, or our cult is better than your cult, you're getting an inoculation against getting infected with the other cults, the other religions. And it works beautifully. If you look at it from a biological perspective, religions are they're evolving just like, any bird evolves or any mammal evolves within a given environment. So the question isn't that will religion, especially Christianity, ever move to where it's more beneficial? The answer to the question is absolutely not. That'll never happen because they're always behind the scene. Religions always follow the culture. They rarely can dominate a culture, except if you're like in Saudi Arabia. But look what's happening in Iran right now. Enormous response, rebellion against the theocracy. And that's because the theocracy simply cannot evolve fast enough to keep up with the culture, especially now with, the invention of Martin Luther's ability to take over basically all of Northern Europe and even some of Southern Europe was a direct result of Gutenberg inventing the printing press. Well, we've had a similar revolution here. We've had something equal to the printing press. We have the internet. So religion just cannot respond fast enough to this. Now, what they will do is they'll try to create a new. So what we're seeing is some changes in the way religions express themselves through the internet. So you'll see online spiritual groups and online churches. Again, they're trying to adapt, but they're behind the curve.
Yeah, well, the internet has destroyed a lot of religions. It's surprising, honestly, to me that it hasn't done more damage to Christianity, because it seems to have pretty instantly decimated Mormonism and Scientology.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
At least Christianity at the moment seems like it's weathering the storm. And I don't. So my question is, like, is there? It seems like if we're going back to the analogy of the virus, which might not even be an analogy, that might just. But like, it seems my people group, maybe my species, but at least Americans are susceptible to this thing. So my question is, like, back to the inoculation thing: is there, if we have to get a pox, can we get a cowpox instead of a smallpox? Like, what's the if we're gonna have to weather this thing, what's the? I want to encourage the version of Christianity. If Christianity is going to exist in America, I want to encourage them to be the most humane. So I don't know, but that seems antithetical to a lot of.
Yeah, Christianity is not person-centered. It's not human-centered. It's centered on a supernatural belief and the afterlife. Your job in this life is to help other people get to the afterlife. As long as you've got that focus, you're not focusing on helping people dig wells in Africa or get over the smallpox in in some other country. You're focused on giving people the virus, your particular God virus. No Baptist confesses their sins to a Catholic priest, and no Catholic confesses their sins to a Mormon elder. It's my virus or no virus. That's the way it is, and it's always going to be that way. Now, what's going on here, and I think it's important to understand, is that when people are 5, 6, 7 years old, the Catholics, the Jesuits, had a saying: "Give me the boy till 7, I'll give you the man." And basically, what they're saying is, if you can indoctrinate a kid before their brain has developed the reason and rational skills to make a reasonable determination for themselves, then you've got them for life in your particular God virus. So the parents who say to their child, "Don't go play in the street; you'll get run over," or "Don't go into that bush or forest over there; the lions will eat you." The kid who listened to their parents is here today, or their descendants are here today. The kid who didn't listen to their parents didn't survive. Well, those same parents in 1620 or whatever told their kids, "Don't go over there. The lions will eat you. Oh, and don't go over there because there's demons that'll send you to hell if you talk to those people down the street." I was taught as a child not to play with the kids that were 5 doors down from me because they were Catholic and we were Christian. They're not true Christians. We are.
Absolutely.
So we're getting inoculated in that sense against other religions, but our own religion is still there. The problem is we have to, the best way, I think the best way to prevent or inoculate is to start early and expose kids to all sorts of ideologies and religions. I tell people the solution to the problem isn't not to take them to church, but to take them to church, but lots of churches. Take them to a Mormon church, take them to a Catholic church, take them to a Buddhist temple, take them Muslim. Expose children to lots of ideologies and help them understand how our brains are easily infected with these ideas that want to use our brains to live in rather than let us live our own lives. Every one of these ideologies wants to get our brain, just like the COVID virus wants to get my respiratory system.
Well, and if it's true, that shouldn't affect whether or not those kids accept that thing. Like if you present to kids at an early age like flat Earth and round Earth, and you're like, one of these might be true, maybe neither of them, you're going to have to do some research. Like the ones who are doing research, 100% of them are going to end up on round Earth. Presenting them with the possibility of flat Earth and encouraging them to research won't lead them astray. But obviously, in religion, you don't have like the Mormon God, the Muslim God, the Christian God. None of them seem to be standing out to prove their correctness. So
right. Yeah.
Presenting all the options to kids does not lead them necessarily to the one that the parents want them to go to.
Well, that's the problem. Parents want to control their children, and I think that's horrible. The less control, a kid needs to be taught how to think, not what to think. And a good parent will teach good, rational, good skills. They'll expose a child to a wide range of things. They'll take them to museums. They'll look at different kinds of artwork. They'll talk about other cultures. There's so much you can do as a parent to expose your child to the real world and not the fantasy world of some religion. Now, that's the one problem with my theory there, if a little bit of it, is that even as adults, we are susceptible to infection. Most likely at the time that we are under a lot of stress or we're under some illness, just like if I've been working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, I'm probably, my immune system's going to compromise and I'm going to get a cold or the flu. Well, religion's the same way. When you go under a lot of stress and pressure, that's when the Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door gives your brain an opening to get infected. We are easily influenced if we want an easy answer, and our brains are really ready to accept an easy answer. And many cults are to say, well, the easy answer is us.
And I think this is true for Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, but definitely in my religion of origin, we wouldn't have said that we were excited when people went through hard times in their life. But there was a thing of like, yeah, but this might mean that they're open to Jesus now. Like there was an excitement about like, this is our moment. I want to say to attack, but that's
exactly what it is. That's your moment to attack.
And so like when you're talking about like you're more open to grasping onto anyone who will promise you a solution when you are in your greatest chaos and turmoil. So I feel like that's also why the gospel message is most attractive to the people who are going through the hardest time and just looking for. Can someone promise me that you've got the answer? Because I don't feel like there is one. So then How do you do that outside of for the people who are in that? How do you what do you reach for?
You mean once a person leaves the religion, what happens then, or how
Sure.
do
Well,
they?
like for a person who is going through like some crazy trauma in their life, and they
Oh,
want
right,
something,
right.
and you're saying, well, the answer is not Christianity, but at least Christianity promises me something, even if they can't follow through on it. Like it'll get me through another 24 hours. How do you get through the next 24 hours?
Wow, that's a tough question, because if you weren't given the early skills, then you're going to have to learn them, or you have to find somebody who can help you, and that's what a good therapist does. They help you find those skills, or a good peer support group can help you do that. That's a key component of what we do at Recovered Religions. We provide peer support groups. There's literally we got 65 of them around the world, and about 2/3 of them are by Zoom, talking just like you and I are right now. So going through that, so many people tell us, "I left religion and I have no support." And we're social animals. We want that social group as protection, psychologically as well as physical protection. So what we do is say, "Well, let us help you find a group. We'll provide some of the groups, and we'll help you find groups." Because once you get into that group, you now have that psychological and social support to make it through the next 24 hours. Because it's not going to just happen to you once. It's going to happen to you many times over the next 20, 30, 50 years of your life. Why not just create a good humanist group right here in your own neighborhood, so that when somebody gets in trouble, they're emotionally upset, they're depressed, or whatever it is, they're, somebody dies in their family, they got an illness in their child. That's what churches do really well. They come together to support people who are dealing with tough times in their life. Well, we don't have to be a church to do that. We could be a humanist group to do that. We could be an atheist group to do that. We could be a Unitarian church to do that. And that's where I think that as an organization, humanist organization or a secular organization, we need to get over this bullshit about I don't want to look like a church, because churches exist because they provide a valuable service to humans who want social connection. You're going to look like a church because that's what churches have done so well. I don't. We're not going to call it the humanist church. I mean, obviously, we're going to differentiate ourselves, and we're not going to be, eating wafers and saying they're part of the Flying Spaghetti Monster or something like that. No, we might. I don't know, but
I was gonna say, I know some groups. Yeah,
you probably don't know this, Jamin, but I'm the high priest of the Church of Flying Spaghetti Monster. So
I did know that. It's an
yeah,
honor to be speaking with you.
okay, there you go. So you can kiss my ring whenever you see me. Yeah, so I'm trying. One of my missions in life is to get people to lose the fucking religious ideas that keep them from thriving as humanists. And I see so many people. For example, I speak a lot all over the country, all over the world, and I will go to humanist groups, and they'll complain that they can't grow, that they don't have as many members, that they've been the same size for 10 years. And I'll start asking a few questions like, do you have a budget? Do you have money? Oh, no, we don't have any money. Well, why don't you have money? Well, nobody gives it to us. Okay. Have you asked for money?
Right.
Oh, no, we couldn't do that because that looks like a church.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So one of my pet peeves is we got to get over this notion that you can't ask for money because it might look like a church. Well, the Kiwanis Club, your local bowling league, they ask for money. They're not a church. Get over this religious bullshit, among other things. I mean, I can go on and on, but that's why, to switch subjects a little bit, that's why I've recently started a new organization called the Institute for Secular Leadership, is I want to teach leaders how to lead secular organizations. And there's different skill set, and there's a different philosophy than you would do if you're leading a church. You got built-in leadership systems in the Catholic Church. You got bishops, you got popes, you got priests, and Protestant churches have got their own structure. Well, we need to start creating ways to lead. And what I see is chaos. I don't see a good systematic leadership model in the secular world. And as a result, people have no place to go when they are experiencing life crises, and they're tempted to go back to church. Well, it's our own damn fault as humanists because we didn't supply a place that was comfortable for them.
Well, and it seems, in my experience, that at least formerly Christian groups tend to reconsolidate around their own ideologies as well. Like
Yep.
it's hard to be actually welcoming,
Yeah.
because it's there's such that pull to like
Yeah. Yeah.
have that thing that, like, before we were on team God and we were fighting team everything else.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
and we knew who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. It's just so clear and so easy.
Yeah.
And then when you have to be more open to the gray areas, it seems like things tend to gravitate towards, anti-Republican, anti-democratic at the moment.
Yeah.
Things seem very
Yeah.
politically polarized, but so then how do you stay open to people of different ideologies and yet still create a cohesive community?
Yeah. I've seen a number of experiences and experiments, I guess you could say. One of which is right here in my where I live in Kansas City. We have an organization called Oasis that I had a minor part in starting back in 2014. It's a secular organization with 5 core values, and we live those 5 core values. And I just went yesterday, Sunday, of course. Every Sunday we'll get 7,500 people showing up on a Sunday morning when all the other churches are going at 11 o'clock. We're not hearing a sermon. We're hearing a scientist talk about the latest geology or something like that. Or I may be speaking on the psychology of religious trauma. Yesterday we had a professional artist from Hallmark Cards talking to us about artwork. Well, you don't go to church to learn anything. I went to church for decades. I never learned anything. But when you go to Oasis,
Yeah.
you learn something.
Yeah.
You hear an expert. You get, and you have no idea who's around you. I mean, we've got ex-Muslims, we've got ex-Mormons, all those. But at Recovery from Religion, and of course a different organization here, when people call us, they'll often say, I just left the Mormon church. Do you know of a group of more ex-Mormons that I could join? They're doing the same thing you're talking about. They want to join a group that's the X group of what they just left. And that's kind of a stage people go through. But I think we try to encourage them to look at other groups. And what they'll find is ex-Baptists have the same problems that ex-Mormons have. Ex-Scientologists have the same problems, that ex-Catholics got. And that alone seems to loosen people up and give them a broader perspective on how they want to live their life and who they want to use as models for their life. It's wonderful, but you have to have that group in place, and that's what I want to see. I want to see more oases, but I also want to see more Sunday assemblies. Are you familiar with Sunday Assembly?
Just by name, I don't have any experience.
Yeah. There's Sunday assemblies now. They started about 15 years ago, I think, in England, in London, and they're spread all over. There's a Sunday assembly in Detroit. There's a Sunday assembly in Nashville, Tennessee. There's an Oasis in Kansas City. There's an Oasis in Houston. There's an Oasis in Salt Lake City. So we've got the hub in Denver has been going on for like 20 years. Really important secular organization that's thriving in Denver. These groups are thriving. I think they could thrive more, by the way. But I want to see more and more of these groups. And what I'm seeing around the country is little groups starting and dying because they got one leader who doesn't know how to lead or doesn't know how to delegate or doesn't know how to build a team. And I think there's so much. The potential is enormous because there's so many people leaving church and they have nowhere to go and they're dying to find, maybe literally dying to find a community that can support them through their darkest hour of leaving this God belief.
It feels to me like religion creates an artificial high or artificial social high that we can't sustain other places other than the military. Like I see a similar like commitment of like, these are my people and we're fighting the bad guys. But outside of religion and the military, like I think the the disappointment of like, but there's nowhere else that feels to me like church. Like there's nowhere else
Right.
that I feel like the good guy and I know where the bad guy is. Like that. I feel like when people leave Christianity, let's say, they're looking for that. Okay, what's going to replace that? And it feels to me like the answer is nothing. Like, I'm sorry, but like you can't, like if you're on the battle lines, you go home. Like, what else is going to make me feel like that? Nothing that's legal.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to like piece together this thing and learn to live with like a normal level of that excitement or something like that, or commitment to the group.
There's another piece that, for example, celebrations of weddings and the ritual that happens around commitments and the way in which we handle death and loss and grief. Churches have got a formula for all that stuff, but we can have a formula for it as well. And what I see in religions is, let's say, my parent died, my father or my mother dies, and the church is going to sit there and pat you on the back and tell you, oh, everything's going to be all right. You'll see your mom in heaven, right? Well, we can't say that. We're not going to say that as humanists. But what we can do is we can sit with you. We can let you cry on our shoulders. We can talk about how great that human being that you lost was. And that's what the Quakers do to bring them back into the picture. You have not experienced anything until you experienced a Quaker funeral or even a Quaker wedding, but the funeral mainly. Because what Quakers do, and this they started from the very beginning, back in the 1600s. When somebody dies, they have a meeting, and they will sit in the meeting silently again, and then occasionally somebody will stand up, and they will talk about the deceased person, and tell a story about how wonderful this person was, or what they did to make my life more. What an amazing experience! Because I've sat through many Quaker funerals in my lifetime. And my uncle was one of the first Quaker funerals I ever went through. And I knew my uncle pretty well. People stood up and told stories that I had no way of knowing of what he had done for them, how he had expressed very strong humanist values in giving somebody slipping somebody a $20 bill when nobody was looking, that kind of thing, So, and it's not the $20. It was the recognition that I want to help you, that I recognize you as a human being. Religion doesn't do that. Religion tells you you can ignore your grief today because you're going to see mama next year when you die. So what it does is it prevents people from properly grieving and moving on with their lives. And I think that humanists have a great answer to the issue of how do we deal with death. And we have a great answer in how do we deal with celebrations and the birth of children or the marriage of people. There's things, and we have to be intentional about that. And we could supplant the churches because they really aren't offering you anything except fantasies.
Well, I really think that like the death experience is one of the places where atheism really shines in my experience. Christians can't relate at all to the almost universal fact that when people leave Christianity, religion, they find more beauty in life than they did when they were in religion. But I feel like this one is an undeniable one of going to, I've been to a few funerals recently, and going to a Christian funeral feels so empty, just like there's nothing there. And going to an atheist funeral is so beautiful, just so like so connecting, and so like I feel like we can see that nature, like you watch like elephants grieve over their loss, killer whales grieving over their loss. Like it's just about like we lost something and we're gonna get through this together. I feel like that's the atheist experience of death, is like we're going to get through this together. And the Christian experience, I can't find any. My dad was a pastor, so like I've been to dozens of Christian funerals, maybe hundreds. And just like going to one now is just it's so amazingly empty. Like if just putting these two up, like, okay, but when it comes to like the thing that's coming for us all, which group do you want on your side? Like it's 100% the atheists, even if the Christians are right.
they do it
Yeah.
wrong.
They do it wrong.
So
Yeah. I've been so many weddings where the Christian weddings where the minister used it as an opportunity to proselytize. And that just pisses me off. Why I didn't come here to talk about your fantasy. I came here to memorialize a person we loved and had a relationship with. And oftentimes the minister didn't have a clue who this person was. They never met him, maybe even. And we don't have that problem. We can do a lot better as seculars. So anyway,
yeah, I feel like if that was their thing, like if they were really into Star Wars and they want to make the whole thing about Star Wars, then I'm not really into it, but I'll endure it. But when I know that this, like they wanted the opposite of this, but you're going to hijack the moment that should be spent about them and do your own personal agenda, like that's pretty angering. I have a really hard time with that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Well, can you tell me a little bit before we close up here? You talked about your first book. Can you talk about the other one? Because somehow I had a conversation with Dr. Ray and we didn't talk about sexuality really much at all. So,
oh, you know me too well already.
So tell me this: is there something? Do you think that sexuality like stands out as one of the things that religion is there to control, or like how does sexuality play a special role in the religious structures and systems?
Well, let me start by asking, can you tell me a religion that's sex positive?
I don't think I've got the background to really know what that would look like, honestly.
Okay. There's only two, maybe, and that's conditional as well. The Quakers are very sex positive. And they were marrying gay people back in the 60s and 70s. So, number one, the Unitarians are pretty sex positive as well. I would put them right up there, right with the Quakers. But almost every religion on this planet that's a patriarchal religion, I want to make that clear, a patriarchal religion, is sex negative. I don't quote Richard Nixon very often because I hate the guy. But he did have one saying. He was talking to Henry Kissinger, I guess, one day, and he said they were talking about how to get somebody to agree with them on some legislation. And he said, well, when you've got them by the balls, their hearts and minds will follow. So that's what religion does. Religion grabs us by our genitals and takes control of our sexuality. In taking control of our sexuality, they take control of us. We are such sexual creatures that's the key. And religion figured this out somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 years ago. Many different religions figured out that if we control your sexuality, we control you. There's no better way to do it. Other religions try to use food. For example, the Hawaiian culture before Western contact. You could get your head cut off for eating the wrong food. But who you had sex with, nobody cared. There wasn't even really a concept of marriage except among the royalty. So the notion of sex negativity is almost non-existent in the Hawaiian culture. It's also non-existent in the Muoso culture, in the Na culture, in the Manganian culture. There's lots of cultures that still have religious or spiritual ideas, but they're not Western or they're not patriarchal. And by the way, Buddhism is very patriarchal, and it falls right into the same category I'm talking about here. So religions have to have some way to control us in order for them to propagate. Remember, we talked about the rabies virus. Rabies virus we get bit on the hand, but that's not where the rabies virus propagates. It survives only by going up through our nervous system, and it may take a week or two. That's why you can still vaccinate somebody even after they've been bitten, because the virus slowly but surely works its way up through a nerve pathway to get into the brain, and that's when it does its damage. That's when it makes us behave differently. And religion does the same thing. It takes our sexuality and it uses that to control us and get into our brain, teach us about sex negative ideas. And I mean, I know people, unfortunately, who have taken their own life because of the sex negative messages they got from their religion. Or even worse, you may sit here and think, well, Daryl, you're full of shit. That's not the way religions work. But I'll suggest that one of the most unnatural things I can think of is to become celibate at the behest of a religion, and that's what Catholic Church does to priests and nuns. There's nothing more unnatural. Every cell in your body is sexual. Now, if you're asexual, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly normal for many people. But forced celibacy, as the Catholic Church does, causes a lot of problems. And one of those problems is pedophile priest scandal that we see, among other things. Nuns are no different in many ways. But when you suppress, take over, and control people through their sexuality, you've got them by the balls, just like I quoted Richard Nixon earlier. So every patriarch religion has learned over the centuries to use our sexuality to control us. It is not in our best interest. It's in the best interest of the religion. There are better ways to be sexual. There are more positive ways to be sexual. That's why in my book, Sex and God, How Religion Distorts Sexuality, the subtitle is important, How Religion Distorts Sexuality, I spend a lot of time looking at other cultures and other cultures' sexualities. The Mangadian culture in the South Pacific, the Hawaiian culture, the Na culture in Africa, the Muoso culture in China. There are many cultures that, if they haven't been perverted by patriarchal Western religions, express a sexuality that's much freer and open and life-affirming and human.
So it's interesting that you bring up you said it's the Hawaiian culture that has to do with food. Yes?
Yep, right.
That's the analogy I was going to make. Like, I feel like the insidious thing about Christianity and sexuality is that it causes you to police yourself, because it's this thing that you can't get rid of, and then every time you encounter this thing that you have, then it causes you to turn more to the church. And so I was going to say it'd be like, if they could get into like your eating, but then you said that that's an actual thing, like, or anything else is like normal. Like, every time you blink, if you're not blinking in the church, that's because, you're wanting to do bad things. So if you find yourself blinking during the day, then that just means you need to come back to the church and ask us what you need to change in your life. It's just an automatic system that if you can hijack that, then that gives you the self-policing, so you don't actually have to go out and police all the people and tell them what to do.
By the way, there's other religions that use food. Jews obviously have food issues. So do the Muslims. But the thing about food is it's not nearly as powerful as sex. Sex really does it. And you use the word blinking, but I'm going to use one that's true, not just blinking, and that is masturbation. What religion does is it teaches you to hate the very thing that you're actually going to do. Most humans are going to masturbate sooner or later. Virtually every primate we've ever studied masturbates. So it's a very natural thing. Whether you do it once a year or once a day or 10 times a day, I don't care. You're going to do it. But if you've been taught that is Satan, that is evil talking to you when you masturbate, then you're going to learn to hate yourself. Now, I call this in my book, The God Virus, I call this the guilt cycle or the shame cycle in this sense, that you do something you're ashamed of and you have to get rid of the shame, so you go confess your sins to the priest, who just masturbated that morning, by the way.
If we're lucky, it might have been a much worse scenario that morning. Yes. Hopefully that's the most innocent thing he was doing.
And then you feel absolution, and you feel, oh wow, I'm free of my sins. I'm not going to hell. And then you go on to live your life, and then your sexual energy builds and builds and builds until you masturbate again.
Yep.
And now you got to go back. Now, you never go, like I said earlier, you masturbated, and you know that's evil and sinful, so you go confess your sins. But you don't confess your sins to the Baptist minister, you confess it to the Catholic priest. Because you feel the guilt based upon the place you learned the guilt. So if you were a Baptist, you're going to do Baptist things to get rid of the guilt. If you're a Catholic, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Mormon, you're going to do those things to get rid of the guilt. You can never get rid of your Catholic guilt by talking to a Baptist minister. And that's the beauty of the God. That's why I spend a lot of time in the book talking about the guilt cycle. The beauty of the guilt cycle is it always brings you back to the place you learned the guilt in the first place. It's a brilliant, genius system that's been going on since Christianity began. Actually, been going on since Judaism began. Judaism controls people by their sexuality a lot as well, as does Buddhism, you name it. Islam certainly controls people by their sexuality.
Well, I had a friend, I had a conversation with a friend recently who is in that situation. He believes that that's a sin. However, he also believes that what happens in his dreams is not a sin. And so, right. So maybe see where this is going. So he prays every night that he will have a night emission because that's his only non-sin release. And some of the dreams that he has are more wild. And so my question to him was like, okay, so then if God doesn't like you having these memories of these fantasies, because that's the same thing as acting it out, like, and you're having these wild dreams, wouldn't God want you to take care of that consciously with a more mild fantasy rather than like of the sins? Like, aren't you doing God a favor if you just take care of this yourself? But he was like, well, no, that would be me choosing to sin.
Is he ex-Mormon?
He's not. He's just a good Christian guy who really wants to love God with his whole heart. And I love him with my whole heart. But like, I couldn't, like, he admitted that, like, of the two, his dreams versus his conscious fantasy, like the dream is way more wild and would be way more of a sin than the thing he would imagine if he did it consciously. But he's not responsible for this one, and he really wants to get to heaven. And so, man, just the knots we tie ourselves into. Or I don't know, maybe he's totally right, and that's the way that God wants it. But it sure seems weird to me.
Well, I'll tell you a story. This couple came to me. They were Catholic. This was years ago. Came to me because they were having marital problems, sexual problems. And one of the main complaints was she couldn't have an orgasm. And he was real concerned because he loved his wife. He wanted her to have an orgasm. So one of the first questions I asked was, well, how do you give to the woman, I said, how do you give yourself an orgasm? And she just turned pale and she almost couldn't talk. And she said, well, I could never touch myself. Okay.
That might have something to do with it.
Yeah. So we worked for a few weeks trying to help her wrap her head around touching herself and him touching her. And how can you teach your husband now to give you orgasm if you don't know how to give yourself an orgasm? It took a while. The one session they came in, we'd been working together for a couple months or more. They came in, both of them just beaming, smiling, just can't wait to get in my office and sit down and tell me what's happened. And when they did, said, I had my first orgasm. That's what she said. Okay, well, so you start talking, find out what she had touched herself and gotten herself off, and then she showed her husband, and ever since then, he's been able to give her orgasms too. Well, that's a religiously based piece of bullshit. And yet it was inhibiting and really damaging a perfectly healthy and happy relationship between these two people. And it's all based on a religious presupposition that touching yourself is wrong. So we moved from blinking to masturbating. That's much more interesting.
Granted. Well, I want to thank you again for what you're doing across recovering from religion. And I always get the name it wrong. The Secular Therapy Project? Is that what?
Yep.
Project. Thank you. And then Secular Leadership. I'm excited to see what comes of that too.
The Institute for Secular Leadership. Yep.
Yeah, Institute for Secular Leadership. Thank you.
Right.
I'll put links to all that. How new is that?
I had the idea 13 years ago. Literally, a friend of mine, we're talking in San Francisco at his apartment, and I've had too many other things going on. I mean, obviously, I'm pretty active kind of guy. I'm 75. I figure I got one more shot, so I'm gonna do. My entire career was organizational psychology. 35 years of consulting with corporations, General Electric, Blue Cross Blue Shield, big corporations. And I want to bring this level of knowledge and practice to the secular world. So about 2 years ago, I started working on this. I started talking to top leaders about 6 months ago, and we literally launched last week. So
Wow.
first class will start February 5th. If people want to look into this and maybe sign up for the next classes, we're going to take people as they sign up. So, as the order in which they come, they can go to our Facebook page. Just look for the Institute for Secular Leadership in online and in Facebook, and you'll get all the links there and all the information and an introductory video, just like we're doing now on how the process is going to work. Our first class starts February 4th, but it's already filled. We're only allowing 10 people in a class. But we will have a new class in March, and we'll start teaching on a regular basis. Me and some of my colleagues. So
I'm excited to see what comes of that. Thank you so much for being you and sharing yourself with the world.
Thank you, Jamin.
Thank you all for joining me. If you or someone that you care about is navigating a recovery from a religion or a religious group, make sure you check out the Secular Therapy Project and recoveringfromreligion.org. Links are in the description for that and Dr. Ray's books and his Institute for Secular Leadership. I think he and the members of his organizations are rooting for you. I know I am, and I think you should too.